on Christmas Day. How about that?
It sucks. It was terrible.
Bloody unfair there.
Oh, jeez, well, Federer remains.
Roger Federer.
Welcome to the 20 Slams of Christmas, a coffee break tennis special for the holidays that we do. We started last year, where originally we started this to just cover Roger Federer's majors, but then it kind of turned into entire years of Federer's career in which he won one or more majors. And this video is part one. We're going to cover the first half of 2007. And of course, on Christmas Day, tomorrow night, we will give you the second half of 2007, everything that happened after the French Open. And this year, you will see Roger Federer using this racket. It's still pretty much the same 90-inch Wilson Pro Staff, but now it's the K Factor, which before that, he had been using a Encode, pretty much the same exact racket. But we've got it here at Coffee Break Tennis. We've got all the Federer things. Now, last year, 2018, before Christmas, we left you off with Roger Federer on a 26-match winning streak after losing to Andrew Murray, having won everything else he played, including the U.S. Open, going up to the World Tour Finals. And now we go to the Australian Open, and interesting that he's doing it again. We're only less than a month away from January 2020, where Roger will play the Australian Open without a tune-up event. Well, back in 2007, this was the first time that Roger had played both Wimbledon and the Australian Open without any kind of tune-up event, going from the French Open to Wimbledon and going from winning the World Tour Finals to a little exhibition in Kooyong, where Roger actually had a bad result, losing to Andy Roddick. Hold on to that thought, because that'll come up again in a very big way pretty soon in today's show. But other than that exhibition in Kooyong where Roger lost to Andy Roddick, he had not played between the World Tour Finals in 2006 and the 2007 Australian Open. And I better point out, it's not even the World Tour Finals now, it's the ATP Finals, and back then it was called Tennis Masters Cup. But Roger Federer didn't really need a warm-up going into the 2007 Australian Open, because 2006 was what many would call his greatest season of his career. In fact, many would say Roger Federer's 2006 season, where he went 92 wins and 5 losses, one of those coming to Andrew Murray in Cincinnati, 4 of them all coming to number 2 in the world, Rafa Nadal, 3 of those 4 on clay. Can't blame the guy for losing to Rafa on clay. And a win percentage, total 92 and 5. That equals just under 95% success rate in almost 100 matches played for Roger Federer in 2006. Many say that is the second greatest season of all time, only surpassed by Rod Laver's Grand Slam years. So we go to the 2007 Australian Open. Roger Federer is on a 29-match winning streak. However, I do note here, if he had not lost to Andy Murray in Cincinnati before he won the U.S. Open and everything else for the rest of the year previously, he would have a 52-match winning streak. And if Rafa Nadal had never been born, well, imagine what the numbers would be then. Of course we can't do that, but it's always fun to point these kind of things out. So here are some accomplishments from Roger Federer's Australian Open. We should note this is the last year that you will see the green court. 2007 at the Australian Open. Starting in 2008, it looks like how it looks today. When Roger Federer wins the Australian Open over Fernando Gonzalez in the final, his one and only major final appearance. If you don't know who Fernando Gonzalez is, you should look him up. He had one of the biggest, most massive forehands you've ever seen. In fact, there is a really cool highlight if you search for it where he tags, I think, Radek Stepanek in Miami one year with his massive forehand, over 100-mile-an-hour forehand. He tags him right in the rear end. So take a look for that. This is the 10th major for Roger Federer and his first without dropping a single set. Of course, he will do it again. Wimbledon 2017. It's the first time since Borg did it in 1980. He had also done it in 76 and 1978. And of course, Rafa has done it 3 times. The last time it happened before that at the Australian Open was Ken Rosewall in 1971. After winning, it is a 36-win streak, beating his 2005 record of 35 matches in a row, which was from Halle to Halle, the grass court tune-up that Federer plays in 2005 before Wimbledon, all the way up to the Shanghai ATP Masters Cup, World Tour Finals, ATP Finals, and he loses to now Bandian. That was the last time he had a streak of 35. He's now at 36 after winning the 2007 Australian Open. He beats a young Djokovic 6-2, 7-5, 6-3.
I think that was going out, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And afterwards, you got to realize there was a lot of buzz in 2007 about this young Djokovic. I believe Djokovic is 18 or 19 at this point. I think 19. And a lot of people are saying Federer could really be in for something here. And after Federer gets this 6-2, 7-5, 6-3 win, he's asked and pressed. For some reason, I couldn't find a clip of this anywhere on the internet. I think it's been taken off the internet. I couldn't find an article about it in the archives, searching on Google. If you can find it, please comment below. We would love to have it because I do remember very well. Maybe I'm wrong. I couldn't find any evidence of this. But after beating Djokovic, and I think it was the round of 16, Roger is asked what he thinks of this young talent Djokovic that everyone thought would have a chance to really bother Roger. And Roger said was something along the lines of, I wasn't really that impressed. Of course, 2007, Roger will have to see Joker again, and maybe he will be impressed later in the year. But the most noteworthy thing of all, my favorite memory from the 2007 Australian Open, is the beatdown that Roger gives who had just beat him in Kooyong. And a lot of people in the media were saying, oh, they had a crazy match at the U.S. Open last year that was competitive. Maybe Roddick is ready to finally beat Roger Federer. In the semifinals is where they meet in the Australian Open 2007. And this is one of the biggest beatdowns I've ever seen at such a high-profile match. The semifinals of a major. Roger Federer beats Andy Roddick 6-4, 6-0, 6-2. And of course, after that 6-0, he breaks Roddick to start the third set. So just think, at the time, Roddick was almost unbreakable. He never got bageled by anybody. For Roger Federer to do this in the semifinal of a major, and it's on a hard court where Roddick should have a better chance, is pretty astonishing.
It's almost like Andy Roddick's shots are in slow motion here. Federer seems to know exactly where they're going before he hits them. And then when he decides to, he just increases the speed by about 20 miles an hour for a clean winner.
No, stop it.
Anticipated this. Olay.
Oh, well, that's ridiculous.
Of course, after this match, one of the greatest press conference moments ever in the history of tennis happened when Andy Roddick was asked, how did it feel out there when you were being beat so badly by Roger Federer? How did you feel, Andy?
What was it like for you just being there at the end of that?
It was frustrating. You know, it was miserable. It sucked. It was terrible.
I mean, just take us from 4 all on, because up to 4-4 you're in the match state, and then you got broken.
I did get broken, and then I got broken 3 more times, and then I got broken 2 more times in the third set, and then it was over about 26 minutes later.
Yeah, well, what changed?
Is that about what you saw too? Or?
Yeah, no, I saw that.
Then they asked him to give a little preview, because this is the semifinal. We had the final set at this point. Does Fernando Gonzalez stand a chance against Roger Federer in the final?
Slim.
One of the all-time great tennis press conferences in history. And one more thing before we move on to Dubai, the next tournament Roger Federer plays in 2007. A couple stats. Roger out-aces Roddick 10 aces to 4 in this match. Again, this is the semifinal of the 2007 Australian Open. Just for a little reference here, in 2007 on hard courts, the average for the entire year, Federer was winning 78% first serve points, getting 63% in, and winning 61 second serve. So that's 78 and 61. Against Roddick in this semifinal of a hard court major, he puts up 81% win on first and 68 win on second. That is an astonishingly high number. And of course, Roddick not known for being the greatest returner, but definitely known as one of the greatest servers of all time. And this is what was most impressive in this match. Despite getting 63% of his first serves in, Roger Federer holds Roddick to 54% win on first, which is very low for a world-class server who's at near the top of his game, and 29% win on second serve. Let's crumple that up and send it back to the annals of history. From there, we go to Dubai, where Roger Federer beats Mikhail Yuzny in the final, but what is most noteworthy is that he runs into Novak Djokovic again, this time in the quarterfinals, and this time Djokovic wins a set. This is a very tough match, and Djokovic wins a second set tiebreaker. Later in the show, and in tomorrow's part 2 of 2007, there will be more matches with Djokovic that feature tiebreaks. In fact, there will be a lot of important matches in 2007 for Roger Federer that feature tiebreaks. Now, at this point, I remember this very well because I was getting very, very into tennis come 2007. And all the talk back then was about Roger Federer breaking the all-time win streak record. Now, Guillermo Vilas in 1977 had won 46 matches in a row. After winning Dubai, Roger Federer is now at 41. If he can make it to the final, it would take 5 matches in Indian Wells, his next tournament in California before the Sunshine Double, or starting the Sunshine Double, going to Indian Wells in Miami. If Roger can make the final, he will tie Guillermo Vilas. And if he can win the title in Indian Wells, he will hold the record all by himself. 47 matches won consecutively, which is still a record today Vilas has. So it would have been pretty nice for Roger Federer to pick up this record. It would still stand as of December 2019. But Roger Federer would not win the 2007 Indian Wells tournament. Rafa Nadal, his nemesis, would win. But Roger didn't lose to Rafa Nadal. He didn't lose to Djokovic. He would lose to Guillermo Cañas. You might not even know who that is. Willie Cañas, that was his nickname. Crowds, especially in Miami, would say, "Vamos, Willie." This guy, Willie Cañas, was on no one's radar. He takes Roger out in the second round with a bye. That's the first match Roger Federer plays at Indian Wells in 2007. Willie Cañas had just come off a ban. He had been playing challengers to get his ranking back to even qualify. This was the first big tournament he had played since his ban. He had been gone for a year and 3 months. Originally suspended for a doping violation. He got a positive test on the drug test they give tennis players. He'd been suspended for 2 years. Of course, he appealed this, and it took it down to a year and 3 months. 15 months he had not played a professional tennis match. This is something that Roger Federer would complain about a little bit later. Not yet. First set goes to Roger Federer returning up 5-4 with a set point, with Cañas serving. After a long, wild point, Roger throws up a defensive lob. Take a look at it.
Który jako pierwszy zastosował to odbicie.
Gets the forehand that he can hit a winner here. Jumps into the air and hits an inside-in forehand, but it's not a winner. It's in the top of the net. But you got to realize, Roger Federer, he's got this 41-match winning streak at this point. Think of the confidence the guy had back then. Watch as he rips 2 forehand winners in a row to get another set point on return in this first set.
On może w ten sposób zdobywać punkty przeciwko Federerowi.
Now, on this next point, I think highlights a difference between Federer back then and today. Take a look at the point. Roger hits this forehand cross-court that really pulls Cañas to his right, way off the court. I feel like today, Roger Federer would be into the net right away and finishing on this ball. Cañas did a great job of getting in really tight and punishing Federer's second serves. In fact, if we look at the stats from back then, again, Federer's average wins on first and second serve in 2007 on hard courts were 78% win on first, 61% on second. And in this match, Guillermo Cañas was able to hold Federer to 36 win on second, almost as bad as what Roger did to Roddick at the Australian Open semifinal, and 68 win on first serve. So that's about a 10% drop on first serve win percentage, and almost freaking 30 on second serve. Whereas Guillermo Cañas winning 69%, not a super high first serve win number, but higher than Federer's, and 54 on second, which made a big difference in this match. Take a look. Eventually, after losing the set 7-5, Roger Federer gets looked at by the trainer. He'll talk about this in his press conference after, that he had blisters on his feet, and it was hurting him in this match. And maybe there's some truth to that, because he loses the second set pretty easily.
Osiąga cel. No naprawdę jesteśmy świadkami
we go to Miami, and I go also. Roger Federer beats a 19-year-old Sam Querrey, Nicolas Almagro as well, and easily has a chance for revenge in the round of 16 when he gets to play Guillermo Vamo Willy Cañas again. This is a match I very much wanted to be, but Federer having won this tournament in Miami both years previously, I figured for my first ever trip, keep in mind, I think I'm 20 years old at this point in 2007. This is my first road trip, and I think I can only get one ticket. Let's get the final. Roger Federer will definitely be there in the final. So imagine my shock and horror when I watched on TV to see Roger Federer lose again. This was the biggest shock of 2007. If the biggest shock of 2008 is Rafa beating Roger at Wimbledon, I would say the biggest shock of 2007 is Federer losing to Guillermo Cañas in 2 Masters tournaments back to back. Federer loses this match with 2 tiebreaks. As I said, tiebreaks are a reoccurring theme in 2007 for Federer. 2 tiebreaks, in specific, a reoccurring theme for Roger Federer. 2 tiebreaks, 7-6, 6-2. Federer wins the second set pretty easily, and 7-6 in the third. If we look at the stats, Federer's numbers go up, winning 63% on second serve and 72 on first, but Cañas better on first serve overall with a win percentage of 76 and wins 47 on second. But he's clutch in big moments in this match, in the tiebreak in particular. And another thing that Cañas does very well, something you'll see Djokovic and Nadal do later on, is just hang with Roger, force him to hit an extra ball. Another thing you could say is, if Roger's not at his best in these matches against Cañas, and I think Roger's definitely closer to it when he plays him in Miami, it's almost like a 3-hour-long match. It's a crazy match. If Roger's not at his best, the attacking player can struggle against someone who plays such defense like Cañas. He was a little bit like Rafa the way he played in this match. Cañas is just getting everything with pure athleticism, able to chase down some of Federer's best shots.
Argentyńczykiem, więc od powrotu. Znowu lob, wygrywający lob.
Make Federer play one more ball. Cañas does something that we just saw Nadal do in Abu Dhabi against Tsitsipas. Nadal so good about recognizing times to come into net. You actually, from what I could tell in the highlights, I don't have the stats to see the net numbers, but it looked like Cañas made more trips to the net than Roger Federer did and had a lot of success up there. Every time he was going up to the net, it seems like good things were happening to him more often than they happened to Roger Federer at the net. So we can always say that when an attacking player like Roger Federer has a great day, he's going to beat the better defensive player most of the time, like pretty much every time. But if he has a bad day, it can be a real battle. And that's what we saw in Miami. And to me, it's one of the biggest shocks in tennis history. Still to this day, I can't think of anything quite as shocking as that. You have this 41-match win streak from Federer, and then he loses to someone no one would have predicted to beat him 2 times in a row, back-to-back at big tournaments, Indian Wells, Miami, the Sunshine Double. Moving on. Federer goes to clay. We go to Monte Carlo, where the clay always begins. Roger Federer does not drop a set en route to the final. He's feeling it again. In fact, he gives a bagel to someone who's pretty good on clay named David Ferrer in the quarterfinals. And then he runs into the king of clay, Rafa Nadal, and loses in straight sets. Roger takes a break after Monte Carlo. Rafa goes to Barcelona, where he wins. He wins 5 tournaments on clay this year. But just before Rome, where Rafa wins another clay tournament, just before Rome, something very interesting happens. Another weird and rare thing from tennis history. Roger and Rafa's battle of the surfaces. Take a look at this. It only happened one time, and it was very odd. It happened just before Rome on, let's see, what do I have here? May 2nd in Mallorca. At the time, Roger was quoted saying, "We've played in Switzerland, we've played in Basel. Now me and Rafa get a chance to play at his home court." It happens at the Palma Arena on the island of Mallorca, where Rafa is from. And take a look at some of the highlights from this match. It is a weird surface, half clay, half grass. I'll never forget it. You'll never forget it. And I'm sure Rafa and Roger will never forget it, as Rafa wins the thing.
Ох, какой удар. Да? Рафаэль сейчас играет.
It's an exhibition. It doesn't really matter. And I will argue to this day that it benefits Rafa because every time Roger's on the grass side, he's hitting into clay where Rafa has all the time in the world to set up and hit whatever shot he can into the grass where, you know, you have a harder time dealing with great shots when you're playing on the grass. And then when Roger is on the clay side, sure, you could argue that he has the same benefit of he gets to hit his best shots into grass where the bounce is low and it skids, and it could be difficult for Rafa to get some of the best balls Roger can come up with. And you could say the same benefit that Rafa has on clay where he moves so well and can get to everything. Roger's a great mover on clay too, but don't forget, Rafa can hit the lefty forehand really high to the Roger single-handed backhand, and that kind of neutralizes the benefit you have of more time to get to the ball when you're standing on the clay side of the court and able to hit offensive shots into the grass side where your opponent is robbed of time. Well, a little bit neutralized when Rafa can do his favorite thing in the world, bounce balls really high up on clay above Roger's one-handed backhand. This weird court that they built to play just one match. Take a look at the trophy ceremony. I wonder if Roger still has that trophy on display in a prominent place in his house. This court cost a little over $1.5 million to make for one match. In Rome, Roger loses in the round of 16 to Filippo Volandri in straight sets. But in Hamburg, everyone thinks maybe Roger can finally win the French Open and beat Rafa on clay because he does that in Hamburg. And the Masters, they don't do it anymore, but the Hamburg Masters right before the French Open back then, the score line, an interesting score here. Roger loses the first set 2-6. Keep in mind, Rafa's already won four tournaments on clay. Must be pretty tired because after losing 2-6 in the first set, Roger wins 6-2, 6-0. Keep in mind, he's won 3 majors in a row at this point. Going back to 2006, the year before, he'd won Wimbledon and the U.S. Open, the Australian Open this year, 2007, where we currently are in our Coffee Break Tennis 20 Slams of Christmas special. 3 in a row, he can have a non-calendar year slam if he wins the French Open. He drops only 1 set en route to the final of the French Open. But the King of Clay, of course, is there waiting, and we know what Rafa, the King of Clay, does in finals at the French Open. It's a competitive match. Roger Federer wins the second set, but there is one stat that will haunt Federer, not just in this match. It happens again, baby. You know it if you're a Fed fan. 1 for 17 on breakpoint chances. Hit the music. Thank you for watching the 20 Slams of Christmas special. At this point, Roger Federer has won 10 majors. We are halfway to 20, and we are halfway done with 2007. Tomorrow, we will finish off with 2007. Comment below what you think. Comment below your Christmas wishes, and I'll give you one more. Merry Christmas. We'll give you some more tomorrow, of course. See ya!